What's up, everyone? Ladies and gentlemen of the 40-ounce hip-hop podcast community, please take a seat or pull up or park somewhere. Bring your friends, gather around, because we have the final fucking 2 spots on the list. We've gone through the good. We've gone through what some would consider bad, but we find pretty beautiful. We found the dark. We found the twisted. But we found the madness in all this list. And the beautiful thing that is hip-hop at the end of the day of this last decade. But these 2 albums are the quintessential ones in our eyes that define this last decade. Well, it's the top of it, the most standout. But before we get all into that bullshit and get all like super deep and all pretty frivolous, let's hop. Grab your shorties. May ye find a 40, a ye old 40 of the English variety.
800.
And you better be ready to pour up with us. But we on the last 2, baby. Let's get it. Alright, with all the bullshit out the way, we are on our last 2 of the list. We are in the top 2. These albums, and before I even go further, I'm kind of curious, what has everyone what would one think about, what was the best album last decade? It's kind of hard to, because so many artists drop things and so many different varieties of albums in the hip-hop sphere. But it's kind of hard to say, what are the top 2, let alone the number 1. But I think from the choices that we made and going through what is considered the best and what we personally feel are the best, I think the final 2, and if you know some omissions on the list thus far, I think it's kind of obvious for most, or for a lot of people, what are the first 2 that kind of come to mind. And today, we are going to get into Kanye's, at the number 2 spot, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
You're right. I think a process of elimination probably had people speculating, we haven't seen that Kanye album yet. We haven't seen that Kendrick album yet. I wonder if it's on its way. I think when we got through 5 and people hadn't seen a single Kendrick album yet, that probably got their attention.
Yeah.
But it's here. What I think is funny is you think about what's the best album from the past decade, and it's not an easy decision to make. Meanwhile, you and I, we actually agreed completely because we both had our personal list, and we both had Good Kid number 1, and we both had My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy number 2. So maybe it wasn't that hard for us.
I know, it's kind of funny that I did all that. It's just, you still got to take into consideration a lot of different, because that was us just going off of what we initially this is off the dome before we even started really formulating and fleshing out the list. We named our top 5, and we're you have the overlap of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Good Kid, M.A.A.d City. That's easily at least number 1, 2, or in our top 3 at least.
Right, yeah.
But it always opinions can change and whatnot. But in this case, no, these albums are great. And we're going to talk to you guys about it today, why we think this is. And
yes, and 2 albums that came out early in the decade.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. It's our top 2 are 2 pretty early.
Right, we've had our opinions about these for a while. We've had our favorite tracks about them probably for a while.
We sat with them for a long time.
We've had time to think about these. Well,
yeah.
To get started with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, this is Kanye West's 5th studio album. This came out on November 22nd, 2010. And I know we spent a ridiculously long time on the Kids See Ghosts episode talking about how it's one of Kanye's most interesting albums because of where he was at in his life and his career. And it's funny because I want to say the exact same thing about this album. And maybe just every post 2010 Kanye album this statement applies to, but I feel like he was at a very interesting point in his life.
Yes, Kanye, you said George Bush doesn't like black people
in 2005.
2005.
Yeah.
So yes, Kanye, you licked Amber Rose's bald head as like your introduction to like the world. Like, this is my girl. Like,
we're a thing now.
It's like, yes, Kanye, you revolutionized the pink polo game of all backpackers of America. But my dog, this project, after the controversial Taylor Swift MTV Music Awards 2009, that little outburst that you did, interrupting her speech after she won the Best Female Video, yeah, people were not going to let that down. You pretty much just picked up America's sweetheart and then just like, yeah, I'm going to kick you off your tricycle. You're like, kick you off your freaking pedestal and let me tell you why you suck real quick.
Yeah, like Taylor Swift, she was like 20 at the time, maybe. And
I know. He treated her like a freaking child. Like, he's like, hey, shh, you don't, good for you, but no.
Well, the exact quote was, yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm going to let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time. And then that was it. And then he was out. But something so simple like that on the night of September 13th, 2009 became probably the biggest story in America. Probably. Like, I don't even know if that's an exaggeration, but
yeah, at the time, it was just like
living through it. Yeah.
Everyone was just talking about it. And everyone was just so shocked that happened. I guess because we were so used to like certain etiquette, I guess, for these music awards and these award ceremonies in general. We're kind of like, oh, well, this dude really just hopped up there and was like, nah, you're good, all that, but my friend is the best. I don't get what you're saying. That's like, so best videos of all time. You may have won this, but you're not one of the best videos. You don't have one of the best videos of all time. Goodbye.
What if he was just trying to get like in good graces with Jay-Z? Like, I this is my chance to compliment my mentor's wife.
That is a very, honestly, that's a Kanye thing to do. Just kind of like, I feel so strongly about this that I feel strongly about my mentor that I'll defend even his wife's honor at all costs.
He's probably just drunk. Let's be honest.
Oh no, he was definitely drunk as hell.
Yeah.
But it's so weird to think like, dang, yeah, you really sat there and thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the Taylor Swift incident, that's the number one thing people in retrospect are going to look at when they think about the period leading up to the release of this album. But to me, I think there's really even a little bit more than that. You mentioned Amber Rose. I feel like that was big because, like, for me personally, it's crazy to think that Kanye and Kim Kardashian have been together for over 8 years now. Because in my mind, like, that still feels new. And Amber Rose isn't nearly as famous as Kim Kardashian, yet it felt like Kanye's relationship with Amber Rose was equally as publicized as his with Kim. Maybe that's just me being biased thinking of living through it, but it felt like people made a big deal about him dating this bald-headed lady.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was pretty, I think this was a different era of EA, because this is post 808s.
That's another big thing, yeah.
Is that post losing your mother and post
embracing the sad.
Yeah, like he was going through a lot at the time, so it's kind of, and this is like the first, and Amber Rose was like the first really public, like, huge relationship that he had after all that.
Definitely.
After really reaching the mountaintop kind of already, with not reaching the mountaintop yet, but hitting a crazy level of stardom after the graduation and college dropout trilogy. And then 808s and Heartbreak, and it's like, okay, what else? Well, now I'm gonna go into exile in Hawaii.
Yes.
And then I'm also while dating this top model and this lady that I'm gonna super drag on this album.
Yes.
is like,
It's important to mention that he started dating Amber Rose right after 808s, and they broke up in July of 2010, so 4 months before this album came out.
Yes.
And it's very apparent that he broke up with her when you listen to the album, like you said. You mentioned Hawaii. I think that's another really important thing to talk about leading up to this album, is the fact that after this Taylor Swift incident happened, this Taylor Swift and everything else happened, Kanye was like, I'm gonna make an album, and I just need I need the perfect setting for it. Like, I just need to be left alone. I need to go to Hawaii. And so he goes to Hawaii to record this album a full year before it was released. So the process started on it early. And it's funny, there's one Complex magazine article you can read that talks about the Kanye studio in Hawaii. I think it's really important for any fan of this album to read, because some of the things you read about it is just insane. You read about how obsessed with recording Kanye was, that apparently he was never really actually sleeping at night. He would just take power naps throughout the day. Guys would be playing games of 21 just to like keep their energy up and to keep their boredom while other guys were recording. I know it's heavily rumored that Kanye was probably just coked up the entire time, because you read stories about how a guy manages to record every day and not sleep and play basketball. The thought of cocaine kind of creeps into your mind. And you see the roster of the people that were listed in this album, and you think, okay, all of them were in Hawaii at some point. So you just think about the magic that went on in that Hawaii studio.
it's like, dude, the roster of people to have and come through with this is ridiculous. This, like, when you talk about a fantasy, like, yeah, this is the fantasy drafts of hip hop at the time. It's like Raekwon, Rizzo, Pusha T, Rick Ross, Charlie Wilson, Big Sean, Sci-Hi the Prince, Swizz Beatz, Dwele, Nicki Minaj, T.I., Drake, Common, Jay-Z, John Legend, Fergie, Rihanna, The Dream, Ryan Leslie, Elton John, M.A.A.d, Justin motherfucking Vernon, and Bon Iver. It's like Seal, Beyonce, Kid Cudi, Mos Def, Santa Gold, Alicia Keys, Ellie Jackson, LaRue, and Q-Tip, RZA, DJ Premier, Madlib, and Static Selector, and Pete Rock. How the fuck do you? And how does Madlib say Madlib said he made 5 beats for Kanye and your shit get paid?
and got rejected.
Yes. It's like, what in the hell?
Unreal. And then one last thing. So that's a lot going on already, but I think music-wise, a lasting impression is it wasn't just this album that was created in Hawaii. Because leading up to it, Kanye, of course, has his own label, Good Music. He did something called Good Fridays leading up to the album, where he did every Friday from August 20th to December 14th. So that's 15 total tracks, but 14 of them came before the release date of this album. He released a track every single Friday. And a few of them ended up becoming songs that would end up on the album. Like there was a remix to Power. Monster was one of the Good Fridays. Devil in a New Dress was a Good Friday. So Appalled was a Good Friday. But then he had a lot of other songs that I think people consider iconic Kanye songs that didn't even make the album. Like Don't Look Down with Mos Def and Lupe Fiasco. You got Looking for Trouble, which we talked about on the J. Cole Friday Night Lights episode, because that ended up becoming a bonus track for J. Cole's mixtape. Christmas in Harlem, Christian Dior Denim Flow, and one of my favorites, Lord, 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 which is infamous for Swizz Beatz having one of the most legendary, terrible guest verses of all time. And so, I mean, that's another thing I keep in mind with this album, is it's like, he was just on this legendary run of putting out great music in anticipation for the second greatest album of the decade.
Yes, it's like, right, even, and the thing is, we should have known at that point, like, the caliber of the team and the backing and what was in store for us when this album dropped, because just even off the first song, the first Good Friday, the Power remix, Jay-Z and Swizz Beatz, Monster, you got Jay-Z, Rick Ross, Nicki, Runaway Love, Justin Bieber and Raekwon, Kanye. what? And one of my favorites out of the Good Fridays, which is kind of crazy that it dropped so early. Well, two of my favorites. Don't Stop, which is Child Rebel Soldier, which is Lupe, Pharrell, and Kanye, which is, I was like, oh my god, this is a group? This is a thing? This is kind of like a Cocaine Navy type situation? Or just like it was so, I was like, oh wow, this is incredible. This is going to be so dope going forward. And Christian Dior Denim Flow, he was chain heavy with Talib Kweli and Consequence, bringing back that synergy that we heard in early 2000s Kanye West, and we could expect from him. It was like, yo, what does he have in store? The anticipation and the hype built up for this album was something that wasn't seen prior, or like on the scale, and it's as flashy as in like hip hop to me as we've seen up to that point, like from Kanye or anyone really. Like Jay-Z has some flashy stuff. Other 50 Cent, man, had a whole movie, Get Rich or Die Trying, but it's like this shit here, musically, undefeated. So you tell me these are throwaway tracks?
Exactly. It's just remarkable how much music he was able to put out while recording in Hawaii, and it definitely creates a legend, a mystique to this album. Just the album itself is already such a grand feeling album, and then to just know the volume of music that went into it is just unreal.
Yeah, man, it was like, and I think the sounds that he was producing, like because all these, the thing about My Beautiful Dark Fantasy is that while yes, it does sound similar, like the soul samples are always gonna be present. The certain hi-hats that Ye uses for, like, when he wants to get into the boom bap kind of pocket, it is consistent, as you can see on songs like So Appalled. But there's an element, when he says dark fantasy, there is that element of darkness and like kind of distortion of what we know to expect and what we would come to expect from Kanye. Even like speaking about So Appalled, like the choral vocals in the back that come about every like 3 seconds on the track in the instrumental, it sounds like something that you could hear from maybe like a late registration, but the way it's pitched down and the way against this dark and kind of almost claustrophobic vibe of So Appalled, sounds creepy, and like if it wasn't coming from Kanye.
Yeah, it's such a grand feeling to the album, just like big and wow and powerful. I don't know the correct words to describe
grandiose,
it.
Bombastic,
whatever the opposite of minimalist is, right? Maximalist in ways that previous Kanye albums never were.
Yeah, man, it's like it feels like he really got to do whatever. We've always seen what Ye could potentially do, and like, all right, College Dropout to Late Registration is like, okay, you could tell his money got up and like some of the sample clearancing and some of his like connections, and then Graduation is like, okay, even more so you're kind of able to branch out and do these different sounds. But here it was literally just felt like free reign, and it's like, what does Kanye? They apparently spent $3 million like from record label just to produce this album, put this album together. But it's like $3 million just to get the album together.
Unreal.
Yeah, craziness. But this album kind of is seen as like his magnum opus, and sales wise it's pretty freaking ridiculous, and like awards and whatnot. Best rap album of the year, Grammys, best rap song.
Pitchfork gave it a 10 out of 10.
Pitchfork gave it a 10 out of 10. Average Metacritic score 94. Often ranked in 20 best albums of the decade and other stuff. And makes sense.
So when you think about this album within Kanye West's entire discography, like we said, this is coming off of four. I mean, you and I consider it classics, but most people agree with us that the Graduation Trilogy and 808s, all four of those are classics, and this is the second best of the decade. Obviously, it's a classic, but I don't know. Do you think it's gonna be remembered as his
best work?
I don't want to go. Yeah, let's go with that. Do you think it's going to be remembered as his best work?
Is it Ye's magnum opus? I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to say. Just because I think it just depends on what you're looking for. And also, I think if you're going... I think it just really depends on what you're looking for. Because, like, even though I love My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I know a lot of people that really do love this album, too. A lot of people still feel that Late Registration is like their favorite, like College Dropout is or whatever. It's like, I think that's the cool thing about Kanye is that he has so many albums, so many different kind of vibes and sounds that he produces. Like, hey, some people are like, oh, Yeezus is more my vibe. It's like, or I like the more raw minimalist flow, which is kind of crazy to go from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy to a very minimalist album like Ye. It's like, it's I think it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. Will we ever get a return to this Kanye? That's my real question. Because if we don't, then this may be his best work. People will probably see this as his best work.
I think I view this album. I don't know if I want to say it's his best lyrically, just because Late Registration and College Dropout, his first two albums, I feel like had the best verses he's written. It also comes with some controversy too, because over time people kind of debate of how much of Kanye's credited writers actually wrote his verses and stuff. But sometimes I feel like this is his last great lyrical album. I don't know if I'm tripping when I say that, but I feel like he's made good music since then, and I'm not even someone who is a I miss the old Kanye type of guy. Like, I still enjoy his new music. Obviously, we had Kids See Ghosts in our top 20, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like this will be considered, from me and from the grand scheme of people, like his last great album.
I think lyrically, yeah, definitely. Because I think the thing about Ye is that he is a producer, but at the end of the day, when he compared himself, when I first heard him compare himself to like Beethoven and Mozart and
as a musical genius.
Yeah, I was like, at first I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, but then the more I thought about it and like going through the consistency of like how well he curates things, you know, it's kind of like, and how he really does orchestrate. Like, hey, I need LaRue for this one line here. I need Tiana Taylor singing her goddamn heart out for Dark Fantasy. I need this. Is like the way he puts things together. I kind of see it. He really is almost. He's like a composer. He's kind of. It's odd, but it's. And I think. But so I think Ye sees that and kind of leaned more into that. And more focused on the sound and like what he was chasing rather than the lyrics.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
that's kind of.
It's like what you said for the expanded roster of the album. Like, he clearly just had a plan, and he got whoever he wanted to execute those plans.
Yeah, man. It was.
He became less of a rapper and more of a mastermind.
Yeah, he just pretty much was like, you know what? I could rap with y'all if I want to, but I don't. I want to do what Ye wants, and this is. I want to hear freaking Elton John just pop in on a quick 3 seconds on the song, or I want to hear, you know what, Mike Dean, please do a guitar solo.
Right.
It's like shit like that.
And Kanye, he's always had big name guest features. Obviously Jay-Z, but he's had Common, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Nas, Lil Wayne. Like, he's always had really big artists featured on his albums. But I guess what makes this one stick out in terms of actual verse guest features, not like the little guest features, but like the real verse guest features, is the verses that these guest features were bringing out. A lot of them are going to be remembered as the best verses that those rappers ever spit.
Yeah, at least one of them, because...
Well, see, the thing is, though, is I think there's 4 different people that you could be talking about right now, and I'm not even sure which one.
Exactly. Because first that always comes to mind with this is Rick Ross.
Okay.
With Devil in a New Dress, because that's still one of my favorite Ross verses, like, of all time. Just, because Ross has some crazy pockets. Like, Ross has some crazy verses. Like, old Ross and some new stuff. Like, some of his newer songs, I'm like, okay, it's pretty player shit. And those Maybach music, like Maybach music 1, crazy. Luxury Taxi, I love. But it's like Luxury Tax, not Taxi. But it's like, this is like, Jesus, why? This, and then, because I've never heard Ross flow so well on and the mafioso vibe of Devil in a New Dress. Just fills his persona, but also is perfect. That gruff and kind of flamboyant energy that he brought to the song, in comparison to Ye's kind of almost cynical but playful, like, hey, we ain't married, but tonight I need some consummation. It's like,
right.
It was a crazy contrast, and it was excellent.
Yeah. Like you said, saying it's a rapper's best verse is a little subjective, but if you change it to just the rapper's most iconic verse, like I think Devil in a New Dress no doubt is Rick Ross's most iconic verse. I think Nicki Minaj on Monster is probably her most iconic verse ever in a song. I think Sci Hi to Prince on So Appalled, that's probably his most iconic verse. Pusha T on So Appalled, I don't know. I'm not close. I'm not gonna, because it's certainly not my favorite Pusha T verse.
No.
But I've heard Pusha T himself say that it's one of his favorites, and I think it's up there, to say the least, right?
That's why I say it's close, because I think it's high up there. Because So Appalled, everyone would just slap. And like, they were snapping so hard, man, on that song. It was kind of like when Jay-Z and Kanye and Psy all are coming at it. There's no room for error.
Right. And for Jay-Z, that's the last guy I was gonna say. Certainly, I'm not saying this is Jay-Z's best verse, because such a high percentage of Jay-Z's best content came in between the years of 1996 and 2003 with Reasonable Doubt to Black Album. Like, probably 90% of what I would call Jay-Z's best work is in that time span. So if I'm just talking my favorite Jay-Z verse since then, or my favorite Jay-Z verse in this past decade, then I think this was probably Jay-Z's best work post Prime. Or like he had a song with Pusha T called Drug Dealers Anonymous that I think is up there too, but certainly I think one of Jay-Z's most iconic verses recently.
Yeah, definitely one of the most recent. It's definitely one of the most, because I think about the song, and it's funny because one of the other verses I always think about from Jay is Diamonds Are Forever remix.
Yes. On Late Registration.
Yeah, it's like post 2003,
Yes.
It's like Jay's presence is always there, but how hard he goes kind of just depends. But usually when he collabs with Kanye, it's like we see the true form of Jay-Z. And I think that's the same thing with kind of Pusha T as well, because I was assuming with Daytona, when that came out, we're like, oh, it's an honorable mention for us. It's one of the best albums. It's one of the best albums of the decade. Not top 20, but one of the best.
Right.
And I think that's the thing with a lot of the verses on here and a lot of the guest appearances, is that Ye brought about, because of how hard he went further, I think curating this project and composing it, everyone kind of had to meet those levels of expectation and kind of outdid themselves.
He demanded excellence.
And people had to meet it.
Is there anything you wanted to say before favorite tracks?
Needle drop. What the fuck, bro?
The 6, the infamous 6.
You reduxed it and still gave it a 6? You could have given it a 7?
Yeah, who knows what he was thinking.
You gave him a D. Anthony, what the hell?
All right, well, for favorite tracks, I think I'm just going to go ahead and start with So Appalled because we were talking about it, so I might as well just finish my thoughts on that. Did you have So Appalled also?
Yes.
Okay, so we can both talk about it a little bit. So I think So Appalled, when I sit down and think about it, especially after I listen to it, I think, wow, that might be my favorite song of all time. When I look at it, it's a legendary verse from everyone. Not only is it legendary verses, but there are lines that I consider, I keep using that word iconic, but there's so many iconic lyrics that I think about from it. Like Jay-Z saying, would you rather be underpaid or overrated? The moral victories is for minor league coaches, and you already told you we major you cockroaches. I lost 30 mils, so I spent another 30, because unlike Hammer, 30 million can't hurt me. Pusha T, CNN said I'd be dead by 21. Blackjack, I just pulled an ace. Sci-Hi to Prince, who, I mean, was pretty unfamiliar to a lot of people before this, and since then he's had some good work with his Black History mixtapes and stuff, but a lot of people kind of consider this the peak of his career with this verse, and he wasn't even supposed to be on the song, right? is how the story goes, is he had to kind of sneak attack, put the verse in there, and it just, I met this girl on Valentine's Day, I fucked her in May, she found out about April, so she chose to March. So I think So Appalled was the easiest selection for me for my favorite track. Like, that was no doubter for me.
Yeah, man. Also, I love the irony looking back on it now. Like, I'm so appalled, Spalding bald, and Donald Trump taking dollars from y'all.
He said Donald Trump.
Yeah, it was like, should have known. Like, going for like his affinity with Donald Trump. I was like, it was very interesting to look back on. Like, all right, Kanye. So this goes.
Who had the best verse?
Don't ask me this.
I'm voting Jay-Z.
I'm probably gonna say Push. It's either Jay or Push.
Okay.
Because Push was just dropping game. Keep the city's best. Never said she was the brightest. If you had her too, don't affect me in the slightest. Never met a bitch that didn't need a little guy, so I dismiss her past. So she disappoints her highness. Is like, that was just a very player line to interwove into your verse after doing like the blackjack. I just pulled an ace. As you look at the king in his face, is like too ridiculous. Push.
It's so good.
Yeah, Push was on another level with that one.
I'd also like to add that Swizz Beatz on the hook redeemed himself for his terrible Lord verse. So I guess to check real quick if we have any others in common. My remaining two were Gorgeous and Devil in a New Dress.
Devil in a New Dress is one of mine.
All right. So we'll talk about that next. Devil in a New Dress. I mean, we talked about Rick Ross's crazy verse, but one thing that kind of gets my attention with this is it sounds like something that could definitely be produced by Kanye. I think for a long time I just assumed it was produced by Kanye, and it turns out it was produced by Bink.
Yeah.
And really it's probably the most famous beat from the whole album. Well, maybe Power. Power is the type
Probably
of thing
Power,
you hear at high school football games and stuff, right?
It's still using commercials and everything, movie soundtracks.
But yeah, the beat on Devil in a New Dress, unforgettable. It feels like I know you always like to say tongue-in-cheek yay. It feels like the quintessential tongue-in-cheek yay song for this album, especially because a lot of it seems to be about Amber Rose.
Yeah.
And has one of my favorite Kanye lyrics. Hood phenomenon, the LeBron of rhyme. Hard to be humble when you stunting on the Jumbotron.
I also, speaking of tongue-in-cheek yay, and it's like, why you standing there with your face screwed up? Don't leave while you're hot. That's how May screwed up. Don't shit around. Whole place screwed up. Maybe I should call May so he could pray. So he could pray for us. Hit the Jamaican spot at the bar. Take a seat. I ordered the jerk. She said you are what you eat. Is like what? This is such a.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's just too
tongue in cheek. Yeah, is the perfect way to describe it. Yeah.
But then Ross, and also before I get into Ross's legendary verse, like I said, the soul samples coming back and in full effect, but just taken to another scale on this song. It was beautiful, and also I think one thing I did forget to mention was he did make a short film for this, to coincide with the album. Which, if anyone hasn't watched it to this day, please do so. It's story isn't the greatest thing ever, but visually, still very pleasing to the eye to this day. Because I watched it, I want to say like last year, like it was a few months ago. So it's December. So yeah, still pretty amazing, like shots and scenes. But watching this being performed along with Runaway, it was kind of like it changed. It made me appreciate the songs even more so, especially because it matched the elegance and the feeling of like grandiose soul in a weird tongue-in-cheek way that only Ye could really produce. But besides that, sonically, Rick Ross bodied it. Never heard it. Like, if you never heard it, please do yourself a favor, and even if you heard it, go back and listen to it, because Jesus, the flexing, the Polk County, Jacksonville, rep Melbourne, whole clique got appetite. Quote, whole clique appetites had tapeworm, spinning Teddy Pendergrams, vinyls as my J Burns. Say, God bless the man I put the sights over. It's like, getting Tupac money twice over. It's like, yo, Ross. Flames. That was the most glorious boss sounding shit I've heard in a very long, maybe still will ever hear. Because that was it just sounded so pretty.
All right, so like I said, Gorgeous was my third favorite. When I think of the song Gorgeous, I kind of think back to the time where it was a couple months before this album came out, and Pusha T and Kanye were on Hot 97. Like, I can still picture it in my head, because like Kanye's getting all sweaty and he's got like this big vein in his head, and Pusha T looks like he's on the coke that he's selling, and he's in his Pittsburgh Pirates cap. And they go up there, and the verse that Kanye spits is he does his 3 verses from Gorgeous back to back to back. And so I always think about that radio appearance when I hear this song.
Same.
And sometimes I consider Gorgeous Kanye's greatest lyrical song. Like, I think it's up there with songs like Heard Him Say and All Falls Down. Kanye is one of the greatest rappers of all time, so of course he has a lot of songs that are candidates for his greatest lyrically, but I think Gorgeous is right up there. And so I think you just gotta just listen to it and hear some of these lyrics. He's got the line about the government and the AIDS, and he's got the line about got caught with 30 rocks. The cop looked like Alec Baldwin. Choke a South Park writer with a fish stick. The same people that try to blackball me forgot about 2 things: my black balls. What's a black beetle anyways? A fucking roach. Like, he just
he was relentless.
It's just it's like prime Lil Wayne or Big L rapping with just like punchline after punchline after punchline.
Facts. That's honestly, that's fine. That's one thing that's funny. I've been listening to a lot of Jewels, Santana, and Lil Wayne again lately, and I was gonna think about it, I'm like, you know what? After listening to this album, I'm like, a Wayne verse on this project would have been pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
And the song I was thinking about, because I don't think I would wanted to hear him on So Appalled. The song I thought about was Monster. If you were to replace the Bon Iver segment, or even just push it back, because I wouldn't want to replace Nicki, because that was a really good Nicki verse. Like, I put her on like, oh Jesus, she's next level. So if you threw on Power on Monster, I think it would have been an even more legendary verse than.
That's a hard agree from me.
It's kind of like, I don't even know if it's already number 2 on here, but I don't know if a single verse could change it. But
So what was your third pick?
Dark Fantasy.
Okay.
Started just the way it all started off. Nicki Minaj with the crazy
British voice.
Yeah, with the British accent, but like take on Cinderella, like because it's from Roald Dahl's Cinderella.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that like might have think you pinked the scene. Like it was just a crazy, ear-catching introduction song. Right? And with Justin and Tiana, like, can we get much higher? Like it was perfect, like a way to segue into something grandiose and different from what we've expected before. And also just love the like yay flossing throughout the whole verse, but also it was I think this is the most kind of balanced blend of 808's Yay and Graduation Era Yay on this project. This, like, that intro song and how it was going, I was like, yeah, sounds pretty ridiculous. Sounds pretty. Sex is on fire. I'm the king of Leon and Lewis. Beyond the truth. Hey, teacher, tell me, how do you respond, students? Is like, and also the way his rhyme scheme on here and his pattern, his flow, really, I feel like kind of inspired. I could hear the inspiration from a lot of artists nowadays from this project. That's the thing, legacy-wise, like, I think it definitely changed the game. And even just from the way it started, like this kind of storytelling and theme, like this overarching theme of like, yes, this is dark, but it's grandiose, but it's still hip-hop. And that genre bending throughout is something that kind of became a norm afterwards.
Yeah.
So, and I think the Dark Fantasy just set the tone with that, you know?
I like it. I think that says everything we had to say about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Now we got number 1, Good Kid, Mad City. Kendrick Lamar's second album after Section 80, but it's his debut album with his new label Aftermath. I mean, I don't even know how to get started. I guess Section 80, it came out in July 2011, and that was such a big breakout project for Kendrick to kind of put him on the map for like budding superstar. But then this came out on October 22nd, 2012, and then it's like if you thought Section 80 was a breakout album, then what do you consider Good Kid, Mad City? Like it's almost like what Days Before Rodeo was to Rodeo for Travis Scott, but multiplied by 10.
Yeah.
Because it's really unfair to compare the two in that way. It's like Kendrick blew up right before it, but then he blew up a second time right after it. I mean, from a guy who people are going to consider best rapper of the decade, it's such a huge project from him.
Yeah, man. The dude, it was like you would consider this being a breakout project because the way how hard he went on this project, and to do it with a concept project of all things, a concept album centered around just your teenage experience and like life in Compton and growing up under it. But it was, even though it's centered around kind of like the South Los Angeles and Compton and his experience in California, some of the tales that are kind of told throughout this project are things that can be applied to many people over several different walks of life, but done so in a way that is both commercially pleasing but also still very satisfying for the hard pressed hip hop fans that are like more like, oh, I need the lyrical content, I need this and that. It checks off all the boxes while still being accessible to the masses.
I agree completely. It covers all the bases. Like you said, it's ultimately about growing up in the hood in Compton, which most people are not going to be able to relate to, but you are going to be able to relate to peer pressure. Everyone knows an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
Religion has an impact on all of society. Like there's going to be ways you're going to find to relate to this. And then from a appeal standpoint, not just a relation standpoint, but from an appeal standpoint, like you said, it's the first album I think of when I think of that mainstream appeal combining with consciousness or heavy lyrical content. I think this was the first album to master that in my mind.
Yeah, man, it's really, even though it like, cause like Shireen, aka Master daughter, like it really dug into the whole content and like the theme of the album. It was really pressing and marching throughout the project, but it's still, with songs like "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe," is like, how do you, for a mainstream record label debut, most people, you know, they maybe get like an artist or two for like one of their debut singles and whatnot, but not too many people just get Jay-Z for the fucking remix.
Right.
And just like yeah. So my original one went ham, but "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe" remix is now about to be on the charts forever for a while now. And then also we have just a small guy known as Drake on Poetic Justice.
Right.
You know, and also, you know, West Coast legend MC8, you know, for m.A.A.d City. You know, it's just, oh my God, forgot about this guy. Dr. Dre on Compton.
Right, yeah.
It's just like, he had, and I'd even mentioned Backseat Freestyle or Money Trees. It's like, there's a lot of songs I've heard that were from this project that had record play and
radio
play.
Yeah.
But all of these songs I had mentioned are still very high quality songs.
Yeah, it really comes down to being able to continue this story that he's trying to tell throughout the album through these songs that can be standalones. Like you and I were kind of talking earlier before we started recording about which tracks might be standalones and which ones are purely for the story. And we're saying how a song like Shireen or a song like Art of Peer Pressure, it maybe not be a standalone that you could hear on the radio because those tracks may focus more on just continuing the story and telling the story. But then you do have these standalones like "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe" or "Backseat Freestyle" or "Swimming Pools." I'm trying to think. "Poetic Justice." I mean, there's quite a few songs on here that ended up getting radio play that could be greatly appreciated as standalones, despite playing a role in the album as a storytelling album.
Yeah, man. So even one of my, like, some of the most memorable tracks on here are both a mixture of these standalone and some of these theme-centric songs, like "Sing About Me, Dying of Thirst," or even "Real." Like I was telling you before, like I didn't read before, and a lot of people would say like "Real" is a skippable track, like the only skippable track on this project.
Mm-hmm.
But just because I think more so the repetitive, like you said, the repetitive hook. And for a while, I was amongst those people in the camp. I was like, I'm real. I'm really finna skip the shit. And then it's like, but when I was revisiting the album for the list, I was like, oh, wow. You know what? The verse is really good. And yes, the Anna Wise hook is a little annoying. But it fits so well, and it does serve its purpose really well. And Kendrick actually has some of my favorite bars, or some of my favorite lines from this project on this song, which is kind of odd. Like, the days I tried to cover up and conceal my pride, it only made it hard for me to deal when living in a world that come with Plan B, a scapegoat, because Plan A don't come free, and Plan C just excuse like because or the word but what if I got love? It's like, because I would skip the song so much, I was like, dang, I didn't appreciate. I didn't even realize like, oh wow, this is really good. This is kind of disrespectful to deem it as that. I didn't kind of put that over the top. Also, I love the Terrace Martin production.
Of course.
Like,
Lots of great production team on this album.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Something that's really funny is, do you remember the controversy about Shine?
Yes.
Okay. So for I guess for those of you who don't know, Shine is a rapper who's probably most famous for being one of the bad boys with P. Diddy / Puffy back in the day. And he got in a shootout at a club and ended up going to jail for a really long time, and that effectively ended his music career. And this guy, Shine, after this album came out, I guess he just didn't want to see another West Coast, or he didn't want to see a West Coast rapper get popular or something, because he called out the album saying the beats were trash, and everyone was super confused because they're like, it's cool if you don't like the album, but like objectively these beats are fire. Like no one knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, man. It's like for him to be like calling it trash and production horrible was kind of like. What did you... I understand it's not like the most... Because even one thing about this project, yes, it does have West Coast vibes and whatnot, but it does have an interesting fusion of sounds. Because even like Backseat Freestyle.
Hey, you got a Hit Boy beat.
Yeah, you got a Hit Boy beat.
You got a Neptune's beat.
The most probably conventional song is... Well, two of the most conventional beats to me are probably Compton and Sing About Me. It's pretty chill.
Yeah.
But everything else is pretty like real, and Good Kid from Pharrell. Like some different kind of sounds. And then Mad City is just ballistic, but it's beautiful madness.
Right. So talking about this album as a concept album, I guess it's important to touch on the concept a little bit. So to me, I wrote down a little short summary that I think I was able to summarize it good for those who haven't maybe read the lyrics or really focused in on the album while listening to it. But essentially, it sounds like it's a story about Kendrick Lamar having a crush on a girl named Shireen. Shireen comes from a gangbanging family on the wrong side of town. Kendrick is a good kid. Obviously, that's where the title comes from. He's a good kid in a mad city. So he's a good kid, peer pressured into robbing a house at one point. Kendrick, he has a crush on Shireen, of course, so he goes to her house to try to meet her up, and he ends up getting jumped by some of her cousins, I believe. Kendrick's friends, they want to seek revenge for it. They end up going in a shootout, and in that shootout, one of Kendrick Lamar's friends, Dave, passes away. I think that's a good summary of it, right? All right.
Submit to Spark Notes. Accept it.
Yes. Very brief summary. But I thought the
admin would like to post.
Right, exactly. I think the way that he was able to tell the story it wasn't just through skits and it wasn't just through songs, but he did it through both. I really like that.
Yeah, that was one thing I also got coming up for, which is very late registration era and college dropout. Yay. But it's kind of like an evolution of that, like the way he intertwined the skits into songs, and it doesn't sound like a rude interruption or anything to the project. Because even like off Shireen, aka Master Splinter, that like phone call from his mom at the end, it's like get this man's Domino's. It's like Domino's.
For the longest time, I always I'm pretty sure he's referring to the game Domino's, yes. But like...
You thought Domino's Pizza?
No, I always thought it was Domino's, but like I want to believe he's talking about pizza because I just think it'd be way funnier.
That'd be freaking... Oh, is this Domino's Pizza in the
car?
I
told you, I did the carry-out option. You told me you're going to go pick it up. Where's my pizza?
It's like, someone said Domino's? That'd be... Huh. Bitch, don't kill my vibe over some pizza. Drunk as hell, eating some Domino's. I can rock with it. But yeah, man, this project, it's so funny because we spoke about great guest appearances, but there's not many. Is not as saturated with guest features as was My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but the guest features on here are pretty noticeable and outstanding. Similar because J-Rock, one of a lot of people's favorite and most notable verses from him up until like his latest release, well, some of his latest releases was Money Tree's verse. Honestly, like.
Yeah, I think with J-Rock, he's a rapper who, from the years 2012 to 2015, he was a rapper a lot of people were frustrated with because it seemed like he only did guest features with Black Hippie, and every time he did a guest feature, it was fire.
Yeah, it was Black Lip Bastard remix.
Yeah, Black Lip Bastard, You and No.
Shot Me Down, or Shot You Down.
Yeah, with Isaiah Rashad. I'm trying to think if it's any more than those, but yeah, and then I still hear people say that on top of those verses, this Money Trees one is the one that shines the most.
Yeah, man. It's verses from J-Rock on here, and verses is like, we point to J-Rock because I think it's the most kind of like no-brainer, like, oh, this is similar to what we talk about Sci-Hi, like, oh, people always, oh, dang, I don't listen to Sci-Hi like that, or I don't listen to J-Rock like that, but I know that verse from Money Trees.
Exactly.
I know that verse from So Appalled. And other people like Poetic Justice Drake, like that was a smash hit. Using that Janet Jackson freaking sample, I was like, oh, Jesus. But it was such a good collab. It was just so.
Yeah, I mean, Drake goes off. I remember when the album came out, some people were haters because it was cool to hate on Drake because like Kendrick was like, I mean, we keep saying it's Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, right? And so it's easy to hate on it's easy to hate on Drake because he's not Kendrick Lamar or whatever. So I remember some guys were being haters, saying like, "Oh, Drake shouldn't have been on there."
Nah, like,
and I'm like, dude, I thought he was great.
Yeah, man. That his last part of his verse, like, I write poems in these songs dedicated to the fun sex, your natural healing, your soft skin, your big ass, and that sundress.
Ooh, good God.
What you doing that walk for? He's like, I see that thing move. Just wish that we fight less and we could talk more. Say communication saves relations. I can tell, but I can never right my wrongs unless I write them down for real. P.S. It's like, okay, Drake, that was a great feature. Like,
I thought
for a song about poetic justice, reference to the movie, and using Anytime, Anyplace by Janet Jackson. Which, if you haven't listened to the original song, please go listen to that. Especially with the shorty, please.
and if we're talking about Tupac references, like we were doing with To Pimp a Butterfly, here's another one for this Tupac wannabe Kendrick Lamar.
But it's even that, like, and of course, MC8's verse and Dr. Dre's verse. Well, MC8's verse on M.A.A.d City, which M.A.A.d City. It's just, you're mad to not like it.
For
like,
sure.
You have to be. Like, I'm sorry. Unless you just say, oh, it's a little too. He wasn't really spitting like that. He wasn't really, I think the beat switch kind of ruined it, Is like, you're one of those people.
It was too long.
It's too long.
There's like 4 verses.
Yeah, you didn't have to do all that. I think you should just kept the first half, or maybe the second half, If. You have to be mad to not like at least one of the halves. That's at least.
For sure.
Because I'm not like something about, because Jesus, man, he made a significant amount of hits on this project, but the hits are ones that age very well.
And to have MC8 as a feature is really cool because obviously Dr. Dre and Kendrick and MC8 are like the trio. I mean, it's debatable, but I mean, some of the most famous rappers to come from Compton, right? And so for him to have Dre on here makes sense because not only are they Compton, but Kendrick Lamar works for Dre to some extent at Aftermath. So that makes sense. So for him to have MC8 in addition to that, I mean, I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, all he needed was Q on here, and it's kind of like, oh, Jesus.
Exactly.
Which is funny, and then it's like, oh. Which is funny, because on Compton, it's like, we talked about Kendrick being the king of the West Coast, and it's like, well, you kind of just got the co-sign of the year from Dr. Dre and C8. And when Shine said that goofy shit about this album, people like Nipsey Hussle, The Game, Schoolboy Q, all these people, I don't know if Dom Kennedy said anything either, but people just came out with like, whoa, time out. Trash, bad, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
it's kind of like, he really does have the coast. He had it all. He just had the perfect preparation, honestly, and perfect backing for a project, and it really felt like it made the story and the theme of it being a West Coast, like a tale from a kid from the West Coast, more viable and more kind of like, oh yeah, you got this guy here, got this. It's something for someone who doesn't know Kendrick Lamar. It's like having it's like an unwritten not unwritten cosign, but like them vouching just by their appearance. Like, yeah, oh wow, he's on this. Oh yeah, so you must be like, they must respect you as an artist, you know?
For sure.
Heck, even J-Rock would like, because I remember listening to J-Rock. I remember watching Hood Gonna Love It. Like, hey man, the Hood Gonna Love It. Like, I remember watching that video, like, when it first came out back in the day. I was like, oh dang. And like years later, I'm like, oh dang, what are you doing on here? Money Trees. And I'm like, oh, Black Hippie. Okay. It was interesting to see, because I thought J-Rock would be in the position that Kendrick was, just because he kind of already had that initial push.
Yeah, it's funny in retrospect to see J-Rock as a 2010 XXL freshman and Kendrick as a 2011 XXL freshman. Just because of how the careers have gone different paths since then.
Yeah, man. It's odd. It just shows how life is strange.
Yes. All right, so one of the things that I always like asking about this album, one of my favorite hip-hop questions to ask people. So kind of like with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, that album was not the only quality music Kanye released that year. He had the Good Friday stuff. When I think about 2012 Kendrick Lamar, he put out a lot of good music. A lot of it was guest features, of course. Like, he had guest features on Mac Miller albums, Big Sean's Detroit album, The Game. But even just like songs by Kendrick Lamar, he had two songs that I think the quality of those two songs compare with some of the best tracks that are on Good Kid, Mad City. And I'm talking about a song that came out before Good Kid, Mad City, which was Cartoons and Cereal featuring Gunplay. And then a song that came out after Good Kid, Mad City, The Jig Is Up with J. Cole, which was seen as like the victory lap album for Good Kid, Mad City. And so I think these two songs were both like such standout tracks of the year 2012 that I think to myself, what if it was on the album Good Kid, Mad City? Are we talking not just best album of the decade, but are we talking like one of the best albums of all time?
I mean, I feel like it's already up for debate if it's one of the best albums of the decade.
Yeah, if it's
the best album of the decade, it's kind of like, yeah. So I think that just gives it more ammunition, honestly. Because Cartoon Cereal, I remember when I first listened to this album, I remember like going back to the track list, like, oh, he didn't put it on there? I was like, is he serious?
Yeah, everyone assumed it would be on there.
Yeah, I was like, this is a crazy, ridiculous sounding song. It was on the same level of energy as Mad City, but honestly, I kind of like Cartoon Cereal more than Mad City, because also Gunplay's verse on there is ridiculous.
I ain't seen the back of my eyelids for about the past 72 hours.
It's like he was, and then The Jig Is Up is like, it's the Kendrick and Cole collab that we've all been wanting.
That everyone had been wanting and then left people wanting more.
Exactly.
They never got more. Or they got the
Friday
song Forbidden Fruit on Born Sinner.
True, they did.
But for the most, in Black Friday, yeah. But never the album. But yeah, the Jig Is Up was so big too at the time.
It's kind of like Which I'm curious to see if they are. That is one thing. Revenge of the Dreamers. Side note, Revenge of the Dreamers 3. They had a lot of I mean, they had TD artists on there.
Yes.
But it's kind of like, I'm curious if they do a Revenge of the Dreamers 4, or maybe if Cole was even on the next two projects that like the Fall Off and the Comeback. What's the next one? Is the Fall Off and something else? The next.
I'm not sure.
But even with those two, I'm curious if he has a Kendrick verse finally, or like maybe some Kendrick verses.
Yeah.
It's like, will we get like a Jay Electronica type of situation? It's like Jay Electronica. And
Act 2 is never coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you're right. It's such a tease to have a Top Dog Dreamville collab and it not be the collab that people have been waiting on for 8 years.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
man.
But I definitely think, honestly, if you added those two tracks, it would definitely, even with the bonus tracks, as we were talking about before recording, like The Recipe, Black Boy Fly, and what's the third one?
Now or Never.
Now or Never. It's like all those, it just further strengthens the project, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Only one I can say maybe debatable was Now or Never. Maybe.
That one's not as popular as Black Boy Fly, I don't think.
Or The Recipe.
I used to want to be like Aaron Aflalo. Yeah, the funny thing about Recipe, because like you said with Cartoons and Cereal, since it came out before the album, is a lot of people were like, oh, at least the bonus track, like, I get it, it doesn't fit in with the concept or the storyline. You know, he probably could have just thrown in a skit at the end of it and made it work, but you know, I get it. You could have just put it in the bonus tracks. And like Recipe came out as, it was the first single before Swimming Pools.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even in the main listing either. That was a bonus track also. So it definitely makes me wonder, like,
why wasn't Cartoons and Cereal?
Yeah, like, talk about a 10 out of 10. This would have been an 11 out of 10 album if you put Cartoons and Cereal and The Jig Is Up. And of course, The Jig Is Up is hard to appreciate without, because it's a victory lap song. It's hard to appreciate The Jig Is Up with, you have to appreciate it coming out after. But still, I just look at Kendrick Lamar songs that came out in the year 2012.
What if, for a 10-year anniversary release, they add these other songs on there?
Then you're talking about that 11 out of 10 album.
I agree, my friend. I agree. But now, instead of an 11 out of 10 album, we got to talk about our top 3 favorites from this 10 out of 10 album.
Of course.
And I think my top 3 are Sing About Me, Backseat Freestyle, and probably Compton, or because
pick one.
Damn it. M.A.A.d City. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Because Compton, I love Compton, but M.A.A.d City, I play that so. Like,
okay. Once again, we have 2 in common. I guess I'll start with M.A.A.d City just because it comes before Sing About Me. Mm-hmm. That's the other one we have in common. It comes before in the track listing. So I kind of think about M.A.A.d City as like the climax of the album, whereas Sing About Me is more like the resolution of the album.
Yeah.
And I think of M.A.A.d City as the climax in the sense that just all this emotion from what's been building up in the storyline kind of climaxes into this crazy intense song where he's like shouting, or he has like this scared voice in that first verse after the beat switches, or you know, it's like this terrified sounding rapper just rapping about gangbanging and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, he just snaps, and both beats really go off, because the first one it slaps with like that bass heavy beat, and of course Schoolboy Q on the chorus with the yak yak yak. That's where it goes hard. But then the second beat, when it switches into that like G-funk type beat, well, towards the end it gets G-funky. But I mean, really the entire song, the instrumental is constantly changing with that emotion. Like we said, to have m.A.A.d on there is such a cool choice. And then just Kendrick, out of all the songs he has about being this observer in the hood of what's going on around him, I think this is the one that paints that picture most intensely. I mean, he's got lyrics saying like, this is not a tape recorder saying that he did it, but ever since that day, I was looking at him different, just talking about like straight up people dying. So
Pakistan on every porch is fine. We adapt to crime. Pack a van with 4 guns at a time. With the sliding door. Fuck is up. Fuck you shooting for. If you ain't walking up, you fucking fuck. It's like, it's just so vivid. Like a wall of bullets coming from AKs, ARs, AL, duck. That's what Mama said when we was eating the free lunch. It's like, Jesus.
yeah,
It was very vivid. And it's almost an artist that also does this a lot, but is not as, I guess, certain artists that do this often, a couple that come to mind are Valley of Good Music now, because it's very just basic. It's not basic descriptions. It's kind of basic descriptions, but it's just like the imagery is just easy to grasp. With people like Valley, sometimes Key. And the third is Dom Kennedy, actually. And Nipsey. I would say Nipsey, too. But Nipsey kind of gives him another type of vibe, kind of his own thing. But those 3 people actually really... when I listen to m.A.A.d and going backward, I'm like, oh, wow, they actually are pretty similar. And, like, that delivered for this song, specifically.
or even Illmatic Nas.
Even M.A.A.d Nas, yeah, really. I definitely see that. Probably was inspiration. But for all these artists, it comes off as pretty good, and it really comes off well, you know. And I think Mad City as a song, like you said, just encapsulates the energy and the pressure. It's the build up. It's where it was all building towards, and like, I can't hold it in no more. I gotta let this thing fly. I gotta let it all out. And it also encapsulating. Between the first part and the second part, it still encapsulates like the dichotomy and like the vibes. Because the first part, it's cool sounding, but it just sounds chaotic, and it sounds kind of, and Soundwave really made the sense of like distortion and like kind of disarray, the sense of disarray while living in there. Sound not very fun, to say the least. But then Terrace Martin for the second part, it made it sound really cool. It made it with MC8 and Kendrick Lamar's verses and the G-Funk energy and the way they were flowing on it. Just like Kendrick, and also Kendrick's vocal pitching and changing, and him getting kind of like a greater sense of control towards the end. It's like, it really was a good example of coalescing with the theme and the general vibe of the album, but also artistically being stable enough to be on its own.
Yeah, the way Kendrick switches up his vocal tones on the verses is so genius.
Yeah, man.
And then, I feel like we can talk about the song "Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst." I feel like we can talk about that for.
That can honestly be an episode itself.
Yeah. So, to me, it's like it's just a no-brainer pick in that it really is truly the resolution of the concept part of the album. When I was mentioning certain songs, they can be standalones, like Backseat Freestyle or Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. But other tracks, there are tracks that its sole purpose on the album is to continue the story, like Shireen or The Art of Peer Pressure. And I kind of have mixed feelings about Sing About Me, because earlier, before we were recording, I grouped Sing About Me with those other tracks that are kind of purely for the story, and so I love them. But I don't know, you kind of convinced me. It's such a great track on its own that even if it purely is for the story, the track is purely about the story and the concept, it's just such a great track that I can see it being a standalone like that.
Yeah, man. It's kind of like, it's similar to, well, in my opinion, it's like For Your Eyes Only from J. Cole. The song For Your Eyes Only.
I agree.
It's a great song. You could not listen to that album and just listen to that song. It's a long song, but it's one of the few long songs that I'm like, this is a really good story from beginning to end, and it's something that is, it's similar to Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, a pretty long track. is one of the few tracks that are that long. I'm like, I will not skip this. This is getting played. Like, it is very. But as a standalone track, even without the context, I could still just be like, I want to listen to this. And the classic sounding instrumental, with it being very simple boom bap, but also almost lo-fi esque, especially with this very faded in the back promise that you sing about me forever.
Yeah.
Like it's a really cool tone setting and like de-escalation from that crazy intensity that we had in M.A.A.d City and Backseat Freestyle. Just kind of like I said, it feels like a resolution. And then Compton is like the acceptance. This is the real deal, like finality, almost like an epilogue of it all. Like, yeah, all right, here we are.
What's so great about the first half, Sing About Me, with Dying of Thirst being the second half, what's so great about it is it's a resolution to this album story, like I mentioned, because like the story about the friend Dave dying in a shootout. That's what the first verse on this song is about. It's Dave's brother rapping to Kendrick, and I mean that's a really powerful verse in its own. It comes right after you hear Dave pass away on the outro skit on Swimming Pools. So it's like really fresh in your mind, and so it really hits hard the first time you hear it. But then the second verse on this song, it's like a resolution from something that isn't even from this album. It's not even from this album story and concept. It's from Section 80 with Keisha's song.
Yeah, man. It's like, so you wrote a song about my sister on your tape and called it Section 80. The message resembled Brenda's Got a Baby. When I heard that the first time, I was like, oh my God, he did not. So he's continuing the message from, so this is her response. Because I really like the song Keisha's song from Section 80, and we talked about this previously. But it was such a flawless, like, follow-up. Because, like, all right, I'm getting addressed from not only Dave's brother, but I'm getting addressed from other people that I've portrayed as characters, but these are actual, like, responses. And, like, yes, you may see them as caricatures, but there's also things outside and consequences outside of this and more to the story that I came to encapsulate. And that's why I think her verse was the best. The second verse about her and coming from her, in a sense, was the best one because it's like,
brought that shock.
Yeah, and it also brought the, like, how could you ever put her on blast and shit, judging her past and shit? Well, it's completely my future. Is like, it kind of calls into question, which I think on songs like You, like on To Pimp a Butterfly, it kind of like further Kendrick's thinking like, am I even in the right to do this? Am I kind of, and we've seen similar messages in like from Injury Reserve, like as we've seen with Richie with the T.
Talking about fans approaching him about the song North Pole.
Yeah, it's like you're talking about this like there's real life inspirations behind these songs. Or even if it isn't, it's kind of like these songs be applicable to real life situations a lot. That while we would be like, oh man, that's just a good song, some people it may hit harder for them, and these artists kind of have to answer to those questions. They gotta be held responsible. Sometimes they're held responsible, like, yeah, so you made the song about my sister, or you made this is, and like for your eyes only in a comparison. It's like, hey, I'm rapping. This is for my daughter that I probably won't be here to even do this for or say this to. So I need you to do this. Or if I die for this album, do this.
I would like to point out that you used the song Keisha's song for a high school project.
That I did. And I got, she took a whole letter grade off my freaking project because I forgot to edit out
the F words.
Yes.
I was smart and I chose All Black Everything by Lupe Fiasco, which had no profanity.
You were very smart because I remember doing that. And she's like, because I've sent her the song and I thought I sent her the clean version. I was like, oh yeah. And she approved of it at first. She's like, okay, because I explained to her, it's like, yeah, it's like Tupac's key. And like Brenda's got a baby. And she was like, oh, I love Tupac. And then little did she know.
Yeah.
I also got kicked out of that class for some other funny reasons. But story for another day, people.
Yeah. And okay, so then in addition to that second verse about Keisha, then you have the third verse, which almost feels like a Eminem stand moment to me. It's how like the first 3 verses on that song is from the character is from a different person's perspective, but then the final verse it goes to the first person view of the artist talking. And so the way Kendrick switches from Dave's brother to Keisha's sister, then to himself in response to these verses that he's hearing from them, from their perspective, I thought was a really nice way to wrap up the first half and Sing About Me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And also the second half is just like the tired of running my own kind, be retiring nothing. Tires are steady screeching, the driver is rubbing hands on the wheel who said we wasn't dying of thirst. It's just, it brings into like the religious aspect and the kind of things that which have always been religious themes have kind of permeated Kendrick Lamar's music.
Yeah, beyond this album.
Yeah, beyond this album. Also, one of my favorite Kendrick Lamar songs still to this day is Christian Corinthians.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was cool to see him kind of intertwine that into this, and also how good it flowed together, because with a lot of beat switch ups on this project, this was honestly one of my favorite. I'd probably say second to Mad City, but still really good.
Agreed.
So what's your third?
I went with Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, which it's not really a song that impacts the concept in the story, so it's one of those standalone tracks. And I think out of all the standalone tracks on this album, it's probably the song that I listen to the most from Good Kid, Mad City, if I'm being honest. Just because, like, really, like the title insinuates, it's really just one of those songs that you can really vibe to, right? So
that's true.
Definitely what I would consider an iconic chorus. I'm sure you'd agree with that too, right?
No, I definitely do. It's definitely up there, and it definitely, like I said, it was marketability for this project, but still kept it Kendrick Lamar. It kept it who he was.
And then it's like on top of the chorus and the beat slapping, probably like one of the high points for the whole album for me is just the bridge on Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, where he and Anna Wise team up, and it's in between the chorus and the outro, just that in the transition from it's like mostly Kendrick with that pitch to his voice, and like transitions into Anna Wise.
Yeah.
And just some of the things are saying like, and they waiting on Kendrick like the first and the 15th, threes in the air, like high power.
Yeah.
I can see you are in sync. That's one of the high points of the album for me. And then kind of cheating, but even sometimes I can't decide whether I like the original or the remix better, the remix being on the bonus tracks. Yeah. Because the original has that bridge that I love so much, and the remix doesn't have it, which really upsets me. Whereas the remix has probably a better Kendrick verse than he has on the original, in my opinion. I really like the line where he raps about Trinidad James going platinum before him. And then on top of that, of course, you have J fucking Z. So, I mean, I think that speaks for itself.
Volumes.
And I love the part on the remix where you can hear Andre 3000 in the background. It's like right when the first chorus hits, and you can hear him go, "Excellent. This is excellent." And so I have a hard time deciding whether I like the remix or the original more because of how much the bridge means to me, but that's my third pick.
A very solid third pick. A very, very, very solid third pick. Then, like I said, for me, myself, I would probably say that would probably be my fifth, because I have Compton at 4, and then I have Backseat. I have Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe 5th.
Okay.
But Backseat Freestyle is 3rd, because Hit Boy just did his freaking thing with this one. And then Kendrick just tapped into Ultra Instinct and just went to another level. Because, man, Martin had a dream. It's like Kendrick had a dream. It's like, oh shit. And it just starting, your chorus is all my life I want money and power, respect my mind or die from lead shower. I pray my dick get big as the Eiffel Tower so I can fuck the world for 72 hours. It's some it's a pretty bold statement to say the least. But and it almost sounds when you read it like that, you could be like, maybe this. It sounds like something you could hear from someone of a lesser, I guess, caliber of rapper.
It's
like,
very ignorant.
It's very, not even that. Like it's just like it seems like something that's kind of like okay, that's cool, but like how are you gonna follow that up? You know, it's a cool chorus, but it's like what else? How are you gonna follow this? But man, he was just nonstop with this. Like the whole song just was non-stop. Flow switches, crazy vocal inflection, pitching up and down. The energy switch, like the shifts in the energy that he brought to deliver certain lines. They say, "K, you gon' marry mine?" Biatch, no way. It's like that whole like it was great, and I think it lasts. Sometimes with certain songs like that, it kind of get tiresome. And, I don't even want to hear it, like, because also when you first hear it, it's like a shock factor with all that, like, oh, whoa, switching up like this, and some of the bars, but it aged really well, and it kind of, I think he delivered it in such a way that it now we associate it with him, not. So when you hear like this dick ain't free, baby, like on To Pimp a Butterfly, like, oh, this is a Kendrick thing, which is kind of cool. It's like an iconic stamp, like this is something he can do. Anything else to talk about about the Good Kid?
I think just the fact that we both had it at number one. So many people that we may have discussed the list with before releasing this episode, like we've heard people say, oh man, I like To Pimp a Butterfly even better, or even just other albums. But at the end of the day, like I don't think I've ever met someone who didn't view this album as at least a top 10 type album of the decade. So I just think it goes without, like, not unanimous, but no one's gonna have an issue with having this number one.
Yeah, man. I think it's you would have to be. I would really love, honestly, to hear someone discuss. I would love to hear like someone discuss a debate, like, hey, why isn't this worth being in the top 5 at least? You know?
Yeah, from our perspectives, every entry in the list is just simply about appreciating that album. So we're not going to talk about why it wasn't higher or why it was higher than the album we last talked about. But that doesn't mean you guys can't do that. Like, any discussion created it's
always interesting.
It's always encouraged to hear. So
that's the beauty about hip hop, man. There's like so many different voices, so many different sounds. It's making things
so much scrutiny.
So much scrutiny you can have. Is hip hop's a very fickle, but also free art, which is so incredible. Because while we have our number two spot is a genre bending masterpiece, and then we have our number one, which is like homage, but also like an evolution of everything that kind of came before it for this West Coast sound.
Our number five is something that pisses people off when you call it hip hop, with Death Grips.
Yeah, man. Number 5, and then number 3 is from a boy band, self-proclaimed boy band.
Right.
So, yeah, man. It's a beautiful thing of hip hop, and this is just two guys' opinions on it. So, of course, we'd always love to hear discussion and talk about the beautiful art with y'all. It's been a pleasure to talk about this list. It's been super dope to make the list with Michael, man. So it was pretty, like, I remember when I first talked about doing this, we talked about like a year.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this.
It was a long time in the making.
Yeah, but I hope I'm curious to see where we'll go from here, and I wonder if our opinions will change later on down in life. I doubt it, but it's fun.
I'm a strong, opinionated man. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm so happy we did this, and I just really hope you guys enjoyed listening to us talk about it as much as we did discussing it.
Yeah, man. Hope y'all pull it up one last time. Maybe not. Who knows?
A couple extra 40s.
Will we get our Spotify deal?
Yeah.
Joe Budden, we're coming for you. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.